Hello everyone, I'm Nate the Great, and I'm here to finally complete this tier list. As you may know, if you are a subscriber of this channel, which there aren't many, but there are a few, I started a Soulsborne tier list about 2.5 years ago, and I never finished it. And here I am today, finally coming back to it, because I have finally felt the urge to. I kind of lost interest for a while in making something like this and making a commentated video. But honestly, I'm feeling in the mood, and I think I'm going to start doing stuff like this a bit more often. And obviously, because it's been so long and because opinions have changed, games have come out, and all kinds of things, I am going to be starting over, which is only fair. So we have here a tier list that is, in my opinion, absolutely perfect in just having everything I want to have, which is basically everything possible. So we have all the Demon Souls bosses listed very nicely here with a specific color marking them as such. Dark Souls 1, and then the DLC, Dark Souls 2, its DLC, Bloodborne, its DLC, Dark Souls 3, its 2 DLCs, Sekiro, showing all things from mini bosses to full-on bosses and everything in between, and then Elden Ring having an absurd amount of bosses, but showing basically every type of every kind of boss. Not repeats, not things like that, but it does have basically every version of every boss that I would want to have on here. It does list how many times this boss shows up over at the top right, but obviously we're not ranking separate encounters with these same bosses, even if they are slightly different, because honestly, that doesn't really matter or factor in to my opinion on the quality, which this is a ranking of. This is not a ranking of the difficulty, this is a ranking of the quality. So I want to first say out the gate, my opinions on some of these games may be different than the accepted opinion that we generally get around the bend, especially on Elden Ring. My opinion is very, very, very positive on Elden Ring, wholeheartedly. Even some of the stuff that a lot of people are really negative on, and of course I will elaborate on why that is. I won't just say it willy-nilly and not elaborate or explain myself in any way, shape, or form. I, of course, will delve into why I feel the way I do, because I have had a lot of debates and a lot of arguments about why I feel certain ways about certain bosses and about certain aspects of all of these games' designs, especially Elden Ring. And while I am not a modder myself, I am slightly involved with the modding community. I know someone who is a very, very capable modder, I will not name them, who has a lot of close contact with a lot of people who are in that circle, who understand a lot about the code and programming behind these games, so I have a lot of more deeper knowledge in regards to many of these bosses and their design intentions and features, and what is actually real and what is not, and we'll get into that as well, don't worry. Because there's a lot of trigger words thrown around when it comes to boss design in Elden Ring, and those are really fun to tackle. But obviously we're going to start with Demon Souls, and we're going to work our way down throughout the games. And obviously I have these playlists here with some nice ambient music from all the games that is just wonderful and beautiful. So first I will kind of explain what we're going to be ranking in terms of quality, because there's many different aspects to these bosses in terms of what quality is. There's fun, there's music, there's gameplay itself, there's arena design, which is probably not going to factor in too much, there's lore, of course, and just kind of the general vibe I get from a lot of these bosses. And I won't be ranking these individually. I might mention them and talk about them, but I won't say like, oh, the music is C tier and the gameplay is A tier, so therefore it's B tier. Nothing like that. Basically, I'm going to be talking about all of these in a very general sense, and then I will kind of formulate where it ends up at the end of all that. And so, with that being said, This is completely unscripted. I have no I'm just kind of throwing myself at this. So if there's a lot of pauses, a lot of ums, a lot of uhs, that's exactly why. And I will do my best to be as concise and clear as I can. But, can't make any promises. And if I start to drone on a bit, like I'm doing right now, it's gonna happen. So, let's get right into it right away. I am ready. So, Demon Souls. I am not as clear or obvious in understanding of the lore of Demon Souls. I know kind of the general synopsis. So if I'm a little lacking on Demon Souls lore, that is why, but I have my strong opinions on everything else, so that's cool. My passion for these games is kind of going to increase as we go on, with Demon Souls not being my least favorite. That title kind of goes to Dark Souls 2, although I still love the game. It's my least favorite. So Demon Souls is not kind of my highest priority in terms of how much I want to talk about it, but I will talk about what I can and give my opinions on what I can. So the Old Monk is kind of our first iteration that Fromsoft has ever taken in really incorporating online play into the genuine gameplay experience. And I would say it was pretty successful. I wouldn't say it's anything to be marveled at, but it is definitely, I think, worth the time that it was, put in to create it. It's a very interesting experience to basically be able to see other players' builds, especially when they're not expecting to be summoned in. If they're expecting to be summoned in, you can either get people who just have a stupid one-shot build, which is really lame, or people who just have been practicing on and on and on to get, to just absolutely decimate people who are just at a lower skill level than them, and that's a lot cooler. Of course, we can get people who are AFK, which kind of isn't too fun, and we can get people who are just so underprepared that it's not a challenge at all, and that level of variability does kind of hinder the quality of the boss fight quite a bit for me, especially the fact that it is really just an NPC fight offline, and online it is just a player character fight. So while there is a lot of variability in terms of the movesets and the weapon choices and spell choices, miracle choices, so on and so forth that the player can use, in the end, you're still dealing with things that you've seen before. Movesets and whatnot that you yourself can utilize. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but with Demon Souls being a lot more limited than some of the other games, you're definitely going to find yourself running into a lot of the same kind of malaise as you fight this boss more and more. With that being said, I am, like I said, lacking on the lore of Demon Souls. I do know that the demon itself is the cloak that the Old Monk is wreathed in at the top of Latria, and that it is transitioning over to a new host upon the death of the current Old Monk. And the journey up to the top of Latria is quite a stark contrast to the rest of the game. It has this very Lovecraftian vibe, almost something out of Bloodborne, which would precede it, or sorry, precede is the wrong word there. The opposite of that, which would come after that by quite a few years. And it's very cool to see a lot of that stuff here so far from Bloodborne's release date, and to have those aspects be utilized here. And the Old Monk's arena itself is this beautiful cathedral, which is itself a very nice contrast to the rest of the area, which is this very dark, dreary, gory, nasty, disgusting hellhole, with spires and towers that are so almost vampiric, very Transylvania-esque, and very Victorian, atop these horrible nightmare swamps, and having this brilliant kind of shining beacon at the top where the Old Monk rests is this very beautiful and very harrowing moment in the same breath that I would say is quite powerful, even if the Old Monk boss himself can be lacking in a lot of ways. And the music, I'm gonna be honest, didn't stick out enough to me for me to even really remember it too well. The little I do remember, I would say it's just kind of there. It's nothing too special. A lot of Demon Souls music... Oh, and this is a topic I would like to talk about, at least very briefly. Demon Souls music is very, very well done. Both versions. I think both of them have qualities that contrast each other very well and end up having their own distinct sound and feeling that works for both versions of the game, wholeheartedly. I think the original has a much more down-to-earth, ethereal kind of feel, which those are very different words, but down-to-earth in the sense of its production is a lot more basic, and it's very homey, almost, but the actual music itself, it has this ethereal, unearthly vibe, while the newer version is something akin to a lot of the later games, this very bombastic, epic, grand scale feeling, and it's a lot more euphoric and emotional and powerful. And because of that, I think it works really well for the upscaled, extremely beautiful graphics that the remake brings into the table. And I think both have their unique qualities, and they both work off each other very well. And with that being said, getting back to the Old Monk, getting back to the bosses, Demon Souls themselves, I would say the Old Monk probably belongs around C tier. It's not bad, but it's not what I would call great either. C being a good middle of the road. And I think the arena is beautiful, and I think the music is maybe lacking in some areas. I think the lore is interesting for the little I know, and the boss fight itself is innovative, but not especially great. Alright, next we're on to Adjudicator, which this is going to be another aspect of Demon Souls, is that they love their gimmick bosses. They love having something new, something unique in every boss, even if a lot of them haven't aged well, and that's really obvious in the remake, especially with the AI often. The Adjudicator is an example of a boss that has not aged well at all. This thing kind of, you solve the puzzle immediately, hit the big wound in the side of it, and then you just decimate its health bar, repeat process, done. The boss's visual design looks pretty dang cool. This fat, large, bulbous beast with the head of, or I don't even know if it's a head or if it's a separate entity, but this small golden bird at the top, having this very stark difference between the two halves. And it's a very imposing figure as well, very imposing silhouette. Those large cleaver swings that have the whole environment collapsing around it, and all this rubble and stuff going everywhere, definitely adds a sense of power and weight to everything he does, as slow and easy to dodge as said attacks are, which is the problem. This boss is very, very easy. It's just a very basic premise that even when you don't know it, the attacks are so slow that you can waste time to just find it. So that's kind of where the gameplay ends, and my compliments do not end there, luckily. The music is very good. I really like the music. I don't love it, but I definitely remember it a lot more than Old Monk at the very least. The arena is particularly interesting because it's this very claustrophobic, tight environment, and that kind of adds to how imposing the silhouette is, and you have to work your way down, and that's kind of the scariest part, is trying to just remain safe as you get to the bottom so you can get to that much easier part of the fight, which is you actually fighting it head on. And so altogether, my opinion is not super positive, but I think there are some decent elements to this fight that save it from being what I would say is a bad boss, which is basically anything E and below. So I would say this belongs at the top of D tier. Next we have Old Hero, which is another gimmick boss, but this gimmick boss has a bit more meat to its bones, which is nice. So the gimmick is that you have to conceal yourself sound-wise because he is blind. And that is an interesting idea. It really is. With the thief ring in tow being a ring that muffles your sound even further, you can basically nullify the boss entirely. Now, if you choose not to use the thief ring, the sneaking becomes a bit more tough, but what I choose to do a lot of the time is to avoid sneaking altogether, to face him head on, let him hear me, let him come at me full force. And honestly, it's a pretty engaging melee boss when you take it at head on full force, which is surprising for Demon's Souls. Demon's Souls doesn't have a lot of those because the game's systems weren't as fleshed out and the developers weren't as comfortable with their design choices to do something like this. So, that being said, I find this boss to be genuinely pretty enjoyable with a decent moveset that's actually pretty aggressive for Demon's Souls standards. And for that, I would have to say that's pretty high ranking. And the music, gonna be honest, it's another case of I don't remember. Trust me, I will remember the music for basically everything after Demon's Souls, because I kind of have a lot more passion for those. So sorry if my passion is lacking for Demon's Souls. I really don't mean it to. I do love this game. It's the one I played the least. The lore, I'm also completely blank on. Gonna be honest. I'm sorry. So, I do like the arena, this kind of tomb where he lies and waits for any kind of traveler to come across him past this murky cave full of all these odd creatures and grim reapers and whatnot. As you come out onto the coastline on this mountainside, as you go down and down and down, and you finally hit the old hero about the midway point of 4-2. And so, with that all being said, because I'm missing so much of the things that could maybe make this boss better, my opinion is pretty positive because the gameplay is so enjoyable, and I have to make assumptions that the lore and whatnot is at least good, because that's kind of how all of these games are. So I'm going to give it a low B tier. And I will actually be organizing these as I go. So obviously if I think, like let's say I thought Adjudicator was a C tier, he would be below Old Monk. I would put him to the right of Old Monk. I will be organizing it like that. I'm going to make this as detailed as I possibly can, and we are going to be here for a while, so get cozy. Next we have Storm King, which I am very positive on. A boss that I am super positive on is a breath of fresh air for Demon's Souls, because a lot of these bosses I have mixed feelings on because of how gimmicky they tend to be and how poorly they've aged. So Storm King is a gimmick boss once again, but a gimmick that is done brilliantly, and it is the Storm Ruler, which is an amazing set piece for this boss fight, and a set piece that is used best in this entire series here. Sorry, Dark Souls 3, your use of the Storm Ruler is a bit lacking. We'll get to that when we get to that, though. The Storm Ruler, especially in the remake, is a glorious set piece that is just absolutely just mind-numbingly beautiful. Especially, like to clarify more, in the remake, there is this powerful rainstorm going on with wind blowing, and these very three-dimensional sound effects happening at all angles, and it adds so much atmosphere to this fight. I think this fight is an instance of the remake fully taking advantage of everything the remake can take advantage of, and for that, I am just so grateful. I am very grateful for Blue Point's job well done on the remake, and even in the original, it's very ahead of its time in terms of how breathtaking it is. For 2009, it's pretty mind-blowing. And lore, once again, kind of missing out on, sorry, but it is a very unique design. I love how almost sci-fi it feels, this flying stingray creature shooting out these crystals and whatnot. It's a really interesting design. Demon's Souls is full of these just very interesting takes on fantasy design. And it is such a beautiful and graceful creature, and its large size is felt very deeply in both versions of the game as it soars over your head, and you can kind of see how big it is compared to the smaller variants of itself. You can obviously hide in one of the houses or just go about with throwing items or a bow or any other kind of ranged weapon. But of course, that's for lame people. You should head down to the coast, head down to the beach where all those graves are. You should pick up the Stormruler from the ground like Excalibur and cut this guy out of the sky. It is an amazing moment and one of my favorite moments from this game. And gameplay-wise, it can be a bit janky, it can be a bit awkward, and that could be it showing its age or just what it is conceptually, but either way, it is so fun and such a visual spectacle that either way, it is excellent in any form it takes. With that all being said, I will give this boss a high A tier. It's not quite S or S+, but it is still an excellent gimmick boss, and a gimmick boss done right, which there is not very many of in these games, so I will take what I can get. Next boss is Leechmonger, and this is where we will be taking a nosedive into the garbage bin, because this boss is the polar opposite in quality. We have an interesting arena here. We have these wooden platforms we can walk along, and this very, very large area where we can be shot at as we approach the Leechmonger. But it is mostly just annoying. And gonna be honest, visually the arena, while it does match the vibe of the area, being the Valley of Defilement, it does not stop it from being really dark and unpleasant to look at. So, and unpleasant in a way that's less intended. Like, it just being violently dark to the point where it's actually just not super visually engaging is not wonderful. This is improved in the remake a little bit, but either way, I like the Valley of Defilement's general vibe and look, but, it doesn't do too much for me. And the music is probably the only thing I would say is good about this fight. I do like the music. And the lore, I'm pretty sure it's as deep as I think it is. It is a collection of garbage and leeches from the Valley of Defilement. Would you believe it? The guy called Leechmonger is a Leechmonger. Unbelievable. So, gameplay. What is there to be said? Man throws leeches, and then he flails around. Then he throws more leeches, and then he flails around and throws leeches, and then he dies in like 6 hits because he has no health, because you can approach this game in any order, which means you can eviscerate this guy. You either nullify the boss entirely, or you get really annoyed and then you'll win anyways because he doesn't do enough damage. You're just annoyed because he's flailing around and his attacks have very little clarity to them, and even if you do understand them, they're not super fun to actually engage with in a genuine way. So, thanks, Leechmonger. Real good. Real happy you exist. Thanks, buddy. You can land yourself an F tier. Probably a low F tier as well. This isn't offensively bad like some other bosses we'll talk about later, but it is probably the worst boss in Demon Souls. Not a fan. Alright, moving on. We have Dirty Colossus, which is a good step up. Not an amazing boss by any means, but it is a step up. This is a boss that goes very neglected by basically everyone because it's another boss that you can kill super quickly. But this boss actually has a pretty nice moveset, some pretty cool mechanics, a decently interesting visual design, and honestly, that's really all there is to be said about it. We have that cool wasp slash bee slash fly slash bug cannon on its arm, and that's cool. Like, those sticking to you and causing a constant problem, that's a cool mechanic. That's a cool little layer to it. The moveset, while basic, is fun to dodge around and mess around with. The arena is nice and open, nice and wide. The music kind of kicks nuts, like it's pretty sick. And yeah, it's a good boss. Like, I don't think it's great, but it's good. like high B, or sorry, high C. That is. It's not quite B, but yeah, it's like high C. It's good. I like it. Now we've made Nostraya, which is another jump in quality. Valley Defilement really is that way. It just kind of gets better as it goes on. Kind of starts out garbage, and then it gets a little bit better. But it tops off with a excellent boss. Main Nostraya is not my favorite boss in Demon Souls, but it is a contender. Main Nostraya is a very, very powerful story moment. It's the only story moment that I still fully understand and like get the picture of, because I think it's one that's meant to kind of appeal to most players, even if they don't understand the deeper lore, which is honestly something that Fromsoft doesn't do very often, but is appreciated when they do it. Especially for Demon Souls' case, because I just like the only one where I don't know the lore. It's a very dynamic, emotional moment where we have to question the nature of our task and mission that has been given to us in the first place, whether killing the demons is really beneficial to everyone, because Main Nostraya seems to only be helping people with her newfound demon abilities, and nursing and taking care of these poor civilians who live in the Valley of Defilement, who are just diseased and rotten and dying, and she's only using those things for good. So why should we kill her? Well, we need the demon souls so that we can open up the Nexus and put a stop to the old one, to put him back to sleep, as far as I know. And we assume that all demons are evil. It kind of comes in with their nature. But this woman who chose to be a demon to help the weak and help the poor and help the sick, well, she's just another in the long line of things that need to be killed on the checklist. And when we defeat her protector, Garl Vinland, she just gives it to us. She lets herself die, and she hands over the demon soul willingly, because there's nothing she can do. She knows there's nothing she can do. And it's a very, very good moment that I appreciate dearly. The music in both versions, I will say that, in both versions, is excellent. And this is where I'll get some flack. Feel free to attack me in the comments. I love discourse, and I love talking about this stuff. So if you want to get mad at me in the comments, please do. I hope enough people see this video so we can actually start a little bit of discussion, because I will absolutely be involved in that. I like the remakes music more. Don't kill me. It's it's a lot more emotional, and it says a lot more about these two characters. It's this, like, the original version is all about Astraya. It's an embrace of the oncoming death that she has no control of stopping, and it's the loss of hope for those of the Valley of Defilement, and that's what it kind of speaks to. And it's this very simple, repetitive theme, not in a bad way at all. I think the original one is beautiful, but repetitive in the sense that it is very basic in terms of the instrumentation, and it loops very, very clearly. But it is a really, really, really good piece. But the remake tells a much more dynamic tale, starting out with Garl Vinland and his valiant mission to put a stop to you, to save Main Nostraya, to protect her, to do his very best, because he believes in her purpose. And I don't know much about Garl Vinland, but I do know that he's sick as hell, and I love him. Because my kind of vision of him, this may be wrong, is that he was a cleric of a sacred order who abandoned said order because he believed in what Main Nostraya strove to do. And for that, he followed her to the depths of hell, to the very bottom of the Valley of Defilement, to protect and save these people. And when he sees you come in, intruding on the two of them, he puts a stop to it. Or he does his best, at the very least. And he puts his all into it. While it is just an NPC fight, it is an NPC fight that is really intense. He has a lot of stuff going on. He's very heavy hitting. And dude looks sick as hell. I mean, like, the heavenly white light casted from this incredible piece of armor that I believe is meant to resemble a squid, is just it's awesome. Contrasted with the rest of this murky, dark land that the Valley of Defilement is in, and all this fleshy, moist feeling that this area gives off. It's excellent. And this music kicks in with this, like, hopeful and powerful rendition of the original version, where it's all about Garl Vinland putting a stop to you. And the music goes on, and it gets sadder as it goes on. It gets, like, more hopeless. And then the moment when Garl Vinland dies, a cue plays in the music where it switches over to being about Estrella again, and it becomes wholly hopeless, and this sad little reprise of the original motif going on in the piece. And it's a very powerful moment, and it affected me. Even though I didn't understand the lore too deeply, I understood this moment, and I understood the feeling that was being conveyed, and I loved it. And the original, while it did make me feel things, it didn't reach this level of connection that I had with this remake version. And that's most of what I have to say about this boss fight. I will say the arena design, while cool and very unique, is a little annoying because it's more of an area. The plague baby puddle over in the right side is just dumb. Don't like that. And Garl Vinland doesn't take advantage of the arena too much, being an NPC. You kind of find him in a very narrow corridor space, which is cool, but it's not super fun. Repeated playthroughs of this fight don't offer much, and that is a negative aspect to it. But obviously I've said a lot of praise about this boss, very passionate praise about this boss, and for that, I would say this is low S tier. It's going to be our first S tier. And Demon Souls will have a couple more S tiers, but Manus Dry is a very deserving one, and I'm glad to have her here. Next we have Penetrator, which is kind of the baseline night guy for these games. It's the original version of the night guy, and that is at least something I'm thankful for, no matter how good or bad the boss is, that we kind of have this baseline to work off of and to use as a kind of jumping off point for the other excellent night bosses in the series that are some of the best bosses in all of gaming. A lot of them started from Penetrator, who, while not as excellent as basically any of them, his moveset is way too basic, does have a lot going on. It is a much more in-depth moveset than basically everything we've seen here. In fact, it is a more in-depth moveset. The figure of the Penetrator being this twisted demonic form of whoever he was before. I don't remember his name. I know he does have a name, but I don't remember it. In this twisted demonic form just being increased height and probably a bit of a more imposing aura to him. It still retains this regal aspect to his design with this armor that is, I mean, just one of the best armor sets ever. Like, it's just so sick. I mean, there is no other way to describe it. It is so ornate and gorgeous, and I love it. I don't know if this is remake specific. I would have to go back and play the original, or at least watch a clip of it. But I know his sword lights in flame with blood in the remake. And I don't know if that's in the original. And if it is unique to the remake, that's sick. But if it's in the original too, either way, still really awesome. I'm a huge fan of that. The arena is nice and open, and I like how it looks as just another piece of Boletaria. It's a very beautiful entryway into 1-4. And yeah, I mean, is it 1-4? Yeah, it's an entryway to 1-4. And yeah, the statues are cool. The further details into the architecture is cool. And yeah, this is a really fun boss to engage with moveset wise. The music is the same as Tower Knight, which is a little saddening, but the Tower Knight's music is iconic in the original, but is definitely kind of shows its age. It's a bit cheesy, but it still has a lot of drama to it, very dramatic. And the remake is really good too, but I will say it definitely doesn't have as much of a standout feeling as the original. But I do still really love the remake's version, and I think it is an excellent rendition of the original, while maybe not retaining all the personality of the original. And at the end of the day, I will say this is a high A tier. A little bit above Storm King, because it is definitely way more engaging gameplay-wise, even if it's not as spectacular visually. Alright, next we... Okay, I guess we have the dragons on here. Yeah, I suppose we get a soul from them, but I'm surprised we're still counting them. I guess Demon Souls still have many bosses, so I might as well. Well... Both of the dragons suck, like, a lot. Like more than Leechmonger, if you're actually fighting them. As a level hazard, they're okay. I mean, they serve their purpose. They're a level hazard. You navigate around it. You time the running as you do. You know, pay attention to where the fire is and all that. But, I mean, like, actually fighting them? You kind of sit in a space that's safe, and then you shoot arrows at it as it continues to not react to anything you do because it has, like 0.2 lines of code somehow. Like, there's, like, nothing to it. It's actually a brain dead. You chuck 1,000 arrows at it over the course of 30 minutes while trying not to go insane. Maybe put a podcast on, get some chips. Get some orange juice. But, like, it's just very... nothing to it. So, with that being said, F-. Do better. No good. Thank you. Go away. Alright, next we have Old King Allant, which is an utterly enormous step up, being... either my favorite or second favorite boss in Demon Souls. And starting off the arena, this incredible throne room broken open at the back, overlooking all of Boletaria, 1-1 through 1-4. It's really awesome. And this air of regality to the entire scene, alongside the music, which is intensely powerful in both versions, being this high-powered organ in the original, and this symphony of different instruments conveying the same exact theme in the remake, both of them being great and conveying exactly what they need to convey about this false, aggrandized image of the old king who has fallen from grace massively, as we see not long after this fight. And the gameplay is honestly a step up in moveset even from Penetrator. It's very aggressive, very fast, and it shows its age in a lot of ways because of the way he gets stunned occasionally and the way a lot of the moves come out almost instantaneously at times. But it does a lot of innovative things with the moveset, specifically stuff like the nuke attack where you need to knock him out of it. The wind coming out of some attacks, creating projectile along with the attack itself. Also very cool, but does add a bit of jank to it if you get hit by both, because you can get stunned in awkward ways and take way more damage than you should have taken. So there is some downsides and upsides to it, but it is a really awesome moveset to watch. The animations are especially awesome and are a projection of everything the King Allant wanted to be, or once was at the very least. Leaving behind this specter of who he was before leaving to join the old one. And so, yeah, the brilliant wings coming out of his back are a very grand image that I am very fond of. And a lot of people complained about how he looks in the remake, which is fair, but I like it. Because the original, he looked way more intimidating and way scarier, where in the remake he looks a lot more realistic and more like a person you could see in real life. And I think that's just an aspect of the remake being a remake in, 2021 or 2020. I actually don't remember. Yeah, so I mean, that's not really a complaint, more so it's just technology evolving, and therefore you can't create a one-to-one replica of the original because it would look super out of place and old. And yeah, so I would say this boss lands itself at the top of S tier. It's definitely a high S tier. Now we move on to the Vanguard Demon. And this is a very obvious prototype of what the Asylum Demon would once be. But funny enough, I enjoy a lot of what the Vanguard does a bit more than the Asylum Demon. I like how it looks visually in both versions more than the Asylum Demon. It's a very unique take on a demon with the 3 eyes and the albino coat and these giant horns coming out of the side. And in the remake, having all these fleshy growths on it and all the jiggle it has. It wielding the axe in such a overbearing, powerful way also adds an air of intimidation to the whole fight as well. I like the arena in both versions. The original having those pillars that are breakable, and the remake having them too. But having destructible objects in the arena in the original is just cool on its own. It is kind of a default blank brick box in the original, while the remake has all that vegetation and definitely matches the rest of the area, and its changes better than what the original did. So I would say the remake is a improvement visually. I mean, obviously graphically, but in terms of artistic design, this is one of the times where it being over-designed, it works in its favor, and I do think it looks better. It taking advantage of what it can take advantage of. And the moveset, you don't get to see a lot of it because often you die almost immediately because he does so much damage and you don't get another chance at it. But if you understand the moveset, which I do because I've done a level 1 run of the game, is basic but enjoyable to engage with as introductory boss. And the butt slam, which is recurring in Dark Souls and later Elden Ring, which it's amazing that survived all these years. That is over a decade old butt slam at this point, which is pretty impressive. The butt slam is really easy to deal with, really easy to dodge, but it is a fun move. And all the added weight and shake and destruction in the remake definitely makes it a lot more powerful, which is good. But yeah, so not much more to say on it. The music is classic. It's good in both versions, but it's something that is instantly recognizable and really, really good. So, with that being said, I will give this probably a high C tier. I think that's about where it belongs. And that's about where the Asylum Demon will find itself at when we get to it as well. So, not getting ahead of ourselves, but it's not very much of an improvement. In fact, there are many things that I like about the Vanguard Demon more. So, now we have King Allant, which is a pure lore boss, and as you know, kinda lacking there. So I don't get too much out of this boss. I think the arena is real pretty. It's pretty small, but I like being inside the old one. It looks really cool. I like the vegetation. I like the little pool of water. I like the way the light shines in the little area. I like how King Allant looks. He's pretty spooky. He conveys that corruption that he's underwent pretty well. So I like that. Seeing his old legendary sword still in his hand, corrupted as well, is cool. Him not even being able to swing it anymore is pretty good. Pretty like that. That's a big fan of that. His one attack or like 2 attacks that he has, doing no damage to you, definitely conveys a lot about the boss, while also being a little silly. Yeah, so just seeing his fall from grace at a surface level is pretty dang good, so I'm a fan of that. But it is a pure lore boss. It's the easiest boss probably in the series because of that. And this is actually something I have an opinion on, is that a lore boss does get a bit of levity for its design, gameplay-wise, because it's intended to be that way. But you can still do stuff with lore bosses to make them more impactful. Moon Presence being a good example of this. Moon Presence is a decently engaging fight, while also being mostly a lore boss. So yeah, I would say King Alot finds himself in the bottom of the C tier. No, I would say top of D tier. It's not good, but it's not bad. It's just okay. The elements of lore would probably be a lot more impactful to me if I understood it more deeply, which I wish I did, and I still should at some point go back to and learn. But as it stands, my opinion is about the top of D tier. Alright, next we have, once again, I don't know why this is on here. That's literally not even an encounter. You get a soul from it, but that is an enemy that is stationary. How about you go down here so I don't have to look at you, because you're not a thing. Like, that is a enemy. I ain't ranking that. Like, I'll rank the blue dragon and red dragon because I actually have a bit of passionate hatred for both of them, and they are more of a encounter. That guy's an enemy. You find the location of him, you get the colorless demon soul by hitting him a few times because he sits there. He's got a cool design, I guess, and he dies. I don't have a strong opinion. Cool. Alright, next we have the Phalanx, which is I would say a better introductory boss than Vanguard, because Vanguard kind of one-shots you, but even if you understood the moveset a little bit, Phalanx is a better introduction to Demon Souls bosses, being a bit more of a gimmick fight. It isn't really as much of a gimmick fight as the others, but it is a gimmick nonetheless, with all the mini Phalanxes protecting the center mass of, I think her name is Oolong? One of the two. But protecting her at the center, her being completely corrupted and deformed after being turned into a demon, not even being able to use her signature bow in any way, shape, or form, and only having these small little followers to protect her, which is pretty good even from a surface level, lore-wise. The music is much better than the original. This is like one of the only ones where I'm fully just on the original side. I think the music is much better than the original because it's such a excellent piece. And a lot of the charm and personality is lost in the remake, which is a little saddening, but not everything can be perfect. But yeah, I think this is a pretty fun gimmick. Breaking off these mini versions that you got to see a little bit of leading up to this boss is pretty cool, and getting to basically one-shot the center is a bit of a dopamine rush after you've earned it from defeating most, if not all of them. Them giving you plenty of turpentine and fire bombs throughout the area prior, especially more in the remake, which is really cool, to beat it more easily, is good design and lets the player have a bit of thought and choice into how they're going to approach it. The arena is just a big open room, but that's fine for what it is, and that's really helpful for what it is. It's a bit dark, if I had to have any complaints. It's a little bit dark for how oozy and sludgy the bosses are visually. So yeah, with that all being said, I would say it belongs probably in the bottom of B tier. Yeah, bottom of B tier. I was thinking of putting him above Old Hero, but I actually really enjoy Old Hero's moveset more than I would enjoy Phalanx. So yeah. Alright, next we have the Red Dragon, which yeah, I hate even more than the Blue Dragon. This sucks. This is arrow shooting simulator. You dodge one go of fire at the dragon, you go up the tower, you get a bow, you get like 500 arrows, and then you have to wait. You can't just like hold down the trigger. You have to wait for him to fly by over and over and over again for unironically half an hour, which is really fun and what I want to do with my time when I play these games. I did not do this more than once because I am not deranged and I am capable of thinking critically. I don't know who would do this more than once. If you did, I'm sorry for you, and I hope you found some level of enjoyment to shooting arrows into a dragon that flies by every 15 seconds. But yeah, so, not super positive, kind of the worst in the game. Go away, goodbye, forever. Alright, now we have Tower Knight, which is a gimmick boss that I like a lot, but I'm not nearly as passionate about it as many others are. I think it's great, like, I think it's really good, but I don't think it's as good as Storm King or Main Astraea, who I would consider a gimmick boss to an extent. I do think it's really effective for the beginning of the game, basically, and for that reason, I would give it a lot of credit. The music, this being the origin point of the Penetrator's theme, this being basically where it came from originally, I will give more credit to. Obviously, classic in the original, still good in the remake. But yeah. Moveset is really basic, but it is what it needs to be. You're mostly just having to deal with it while you clear out the enemies in the arena. So it's not something you have to engage with too in depth, and that's good, because you need to just be focusing on the enemies here rather than dealing with the giant guy in the room. And then when you actually fight him head on, the big shield slams are really awesome, and visually the guy is super imposing and very awesome. I love how the armor looks, I love how the shield looks, I love how the spear looks. And getting behind him and finding out you need to hit at the heels to knock him down is really cool. And the dopamine rush of hitting the head and doing a ton of damage is a lot more intense and a lot better than what we see in the Adjudicator, simply because of how much more exciting it is taking him down with the much more like just engaging music, gameplay, visual design, all that stuff. It adds a lot more weight to everything, and the incredible sound design and visual design of everything adds so much. And for that, for all that, I would say this boss probably is low A tier. Yeah, that seems about right. The worst of the best gimmick bosses, but still a really, really good gimmick boss nonetheless. Next we have the Armor Spider, which is way better in the remake, but still very awkward. That is the main thing I would say about this boss, is that it's awkward. A lot of the fire attacks kind of come out of nowhere. There's not a lot of visual distinction in between them in terms of the animation from the spider itself. A lot of the attacks are very jolty and sudden, and while that works with the design of a spider, in gameplay terms, it mostly just ends up being annoying. I like how it looks visually. I like big spiders. I always love big spiders, so big fan of that. And a big spider that shoots fire and all that stuff, it's pretty cool. The webs are a nice little twist on the formula, slowing you down and all that, and introducing something like that in Demon Souls is really, really good. I like stuff like that, where dodging it does not mean just avoiding damage, it means avoiding an actual hindrance that will lead to more damage. In the remake, adding that visual distinction with the oil on the ground before it shoots the fire and lights it up is great. That's a really good change. That is much appreciated from what they did in the original, which was kind of a mess. But the boss up close has some layer of fun to it. It's cool watching out for the jolty attacks and just placing yourself in the right position and dodging at the right times. That's okay. The approach leading to it is pretty cool. The little tunnel that you walk through in the mine and the web-filled opening at the end of it is pretty awesome. So that'll combine leads to, general feelings of, it's okay, but a little annoying. So at the end of the day, I would say this is probably a high D tier. Top of D tier currently. I don't hate it, but it definitely has a lot to be desired. Now we have Flame Lurker, which might be my favorite boss in the game. If I knew the lore more in depth, I'd probably like Old King a little bit more, but as it stands, I find the gameplay to just be ever so slightly more enjoyable from Flame Lurker. It's kind of our first instance of a truly hyper-aggressive enemy in the series, or hyper-aggressive boss, that is, being this just Doom-esque demon in the remake, and a much more unique design in the original. I think both of them have their upsides and downsides. The original is a bit bright to look at. It's pretty blinding. You're looking like you're looking at a solar flare. It's basically impossible to look at, but the model itself looks a little flat in some ways, but it definitely has a lot more charm to it than the remake. The remake is just pure epic. It's just a genuine Balrog, a pure fantasy demon that is, I mean, I can't fault it. It looks sick, even if it's not particularly original. It looks awesome. And for what I know about the Flame Lurker, it doesn't really have to be super original. I mean, it is just a big flame imp that protects the dragon god. Like, that's kind of all there is to it. So I wouldn't really expect it to be super unique and really have its own kind of personality or flair to it. So yeah. The music is excellent, both versions. The original is classic and has a lot of charm and personality to it, and it is just a magnificent piece. But the remake is a true Dark Souls 3, like epic, over the top, like full orchestrated track that is wonderful to listen to, with little nods here and there to the motifs of the original theme. And yeah, I love that. So the arena is definitely a lot less architecturally designed in the original, but definitely has its qualities to it. I like the little things in the arena to get in your way and to also break aggro. And in the remake, it being a lot more over-designed, but also a lot cooler to look at. Kind of in the same way that the boss itself is. It's great. I already talked about the lore a little bit, but it's pretty basic. There's not a lot to delve into. So it's just okay. But yeah, the moveset, it's really well put together, and it's something that is a lot cooler to engage with than Old King Allant. Particularly for things such as the explosions on some attacks. This is predictable, and you can predict when these explosions are on what attacks they are, and you know when to basically time your rolls better or get away, and when to truly just dodge through the boss and get your attacks in. And that's fun. Like, that's just good. I like having more depth to the rolling mechanics and understanding the boss's moveset than just time roll, time the roll, time the roll, so on and so forth. So that all put together adds to a excellent boss fight. That is a great example of an aggressive type boss that we will have a lot better versions of later on. But for the time being, this is an excellent first step with this boss. And for that, I will give it the top of S currently. It is probably my favorite boss in Demon Souls. Not by a huge margin, but there is a margin. And now we have Dragon God, which is not only a terrible boss, but a wholly disappointing boss. It being showed off in the trailers, and it being shown off as kind of the most grand moment of Demon Souls, and now it's reduced to a stealth boss in a game that does not have stealth mechanics, like, at all. Like, literally no stealth mechanics developed in any way, shape, or form. I'd be interested in seeing how this boss would maybe fare in something like Sekiro. That'd be pretty cool. Obviously, they'd have to shake things up a lot to make it jive with more of the systems of jumping and grappling and all that, but that would be interesting, having it with genuine stealth mechanics. But as it stands, it's just boring, and when it's not boring, it's irritating and frustrating because you're getting one-shot by stuff that you have so little control over, because there's not a, I mean, there's a visual cue for when he's going to hit you, but when you're trying to focus on breaking rubble and stuff and navigating, that visual cue of the eyes changing color just isn't enough. And the process of shooting just several ballistas in it as it just stands there on the edge of the rock is not much. And then you go down and you hit it in the chin a couple times and then it dies. It is just such a disappointing way to deal with this foe that should be so grand and impressive. And that's the only thing I can really give it, is it looks stellar. It's a very, very unique take on a dragon, being much more humanoid and bulked up in the chest region. And so yeah, that's basically all I can give it, is that it just is such a unique dragon design, and I wish more was done with it. And I think this is a case of Demon Souls just not being able to capitalize on this because of its age. It couldn't take advantage of that ambition that it had with all it could have been, simply because the game was not fleshed out enough mechanically, and there was not enough that they could do with it to make it as engaging. So this is something I'm apologetic towards, but it's still immensely disappointing, and I wish this was still a quality fight, but it just isn't. And with that being said, I'm gonna have to give this either a low E or top of F. Yeah, I would say top of F. I'm sorry. There's more going on than Leechmonger, of course, and it is definitely more enjoyable in some ways than Leechmonger, but it's just a very saddening boss. Fool's Idol. This is Pinwheel done better before Pinwheel existed, which is a bit funny, but it is true. Fool's Idol creates multiple clones that all fire at you, but they are in these set locations, and the Fool's Idol itself is noted by is it magic color or size? I don't remember. It's been a bit, but there is a good distinction that isn't too obvious, and the boss, while not having a lot of health, definitely has more health than Pinwheel if you're approaching it at in a time frame that makes sense. Because of the way Pinwheel's placed, which is just horrible, you do so much damage to him that doesn't even matter. But with Fool's Idol, it does have a bit more health. And with everything else in the arena, and the benches and all that, and the other enemies that I think are there, just like the hollow type enemies, adds definitely a bit more to it. Visually, the arena is a lot more glorious. I love cathedrals. I love grand cathedrals like that, so I'm a sucker for that. I'm a sucker for stained glass, so all of that appeals to me. This is also more engaging mechanically because you can talk to the one up top, talk to the little hollow up top to lessen the challenge a bit. Or I mean lessen the challenge entirely, because it's impossible otherwise, because it'll just go on forever. So having that extra layer to it and actually having to understand what's going on with him and paying attention to the cue in the fight that tells you that, like, oh shoot, he's making this happen forever, so I have to put a stop to that in the next run, is pretty good. Like, that's a good moment. The boss herself, she looks cool. I believe she's meant to be a basically a over embellished version of the Queen of Latria, who I believe is passed. And yeah, I mean, she's a pretty good example of that. I like how she looks visually. She's very very unique for a queen, but also makes sense how she would look for, someone high-ranking in Latria, it being a much drearier and much more gothic place. Having someone like this in it, having someone like this be a high position in society there makes a lot more sense. Yeah, so I don't hate this boss, but I don't think it's definitely, I don't think it really stands out. It has some good things to it. And for that, I would say this probably belongs in the middle of C tier. Next, and finally for Demon Souls, we have the Man-Eaters. This is a boss that I wish could be better than it is, but sadly, it is the best example of Demon Souls showing its age. The absolute best example of Demon Souls showing its age. The AI just doesn't work. It's pretty sad that this is the case, but it's an unavoidable truth. It's janky. They fly around sometimes. Sometimes they're really aggressive. Sometimes they waste your time. Sometimes they bug out entirely. It's kind of a mess. But I really like their movesets. They look awesome. These gargoyle archetypes shooting these sound magic stuff. It looks awesome. And them ramming into you and slicing at you, it's cool. And this dark bridge you fight them on in this horribly bleak environment under the spire of the old monk. It's all just really awesome. And it has so much drama to it. And I only wish the fight worked better. It's the first gank fight we've ever had in the series, and it would have worked great. It would have been a really good example of a gank boss if only the AI worked. Because sometimes you'll fight the first one and you'll just kill it as the second one's showing up because it won't land, or you'll fight both of them at once and it's a mess. because they're meant to kind of alternate, and you're only supposed to fight both of them at once for a short amount of time, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. I do wish the bridge was a little wider, but otherwise I do like the tight environment you have to fight them on, because it is pretty scary. It's pretty terrifying with the thought of falling off and dying instantly. So I do like the arena for that reason. And I'm going to be honest, I don't remember the music again. It's just another case of me not knowing Demon Souls as well, so I'm sorry about that. But I'm sure it's pretty good. And with that all being said, even though the AI is lacking in a lot of ways and the boss is very janky, I still like it. I still do. I still genuinely like it because of how much it inspired in the future, and because of how much of a innovative leap it was. And for that, I would say this belongs at the top of B. And I think I'm going to wrap it up there. I was going to do all the games, but I'm starting to realize with how much I want to discuss and talk about these, this is going to take a long time, especially because Demon Souls is the one I'm least passionate about with the least amount of bosses, and it took me this long. So I think I'm going to stop there. I hope you enjoyed my opinions thus far. Next we have Dark Souls 1 coming up, which is a game I know a lot more about and have a lot more to say on every single aspect of, so I hope you're looking forward to that. If you want to discuss and talk about it, please feel free to like or dislike. Either way works for me. Dislikes are turned off, but you can turn them back on, I know. So feel free to throw me a dislike. Cool with that. Feel free to throw me a hate comment. Love those. Tell me to off myself in funny ways. That's cool too. Just, say what you will. Let's have a discussion. Let's talk about these. If this gets out there at all. If not, if I'm just talking to the void, that's cool too. I like archiving these things. Yeah. So, it was wonderful making this video, and I will see you all very, very soon.